The sun over Umezi beat down like a hammer that day, flattening shadows and scorching the cracked earth. Heat shimmered above the dusty road, twisting the air into ripples. Even the cicadas had grown silent, their shrill songs drowned by the weight of noon. In the far distance, where the path from the northern hills curved toward the village, a figure appeared. At first it was nothing more than a speck on the horizon, but as it drew nearer, the details unfolded like a secret, slowly whispered. She walked alone. A wide-brimmed straw hat shaded her face, though now and then the breeze lifted the brim, revealing glimpses of smooth brown skin kissed by sunlight. A woven basket, round and deep, perched effortlessly on her head, the yellow tips of ripe bananas peeking out. At her side swung a small leather rafa bag, the kind travelers carried when they bore little but their own past. No goats, no chickens, no bundles of clothes, just the bananas, the bag, and herself. The village watches at the edge of Obi Square. Old Mama Uju was pounding yam in a mortar as her granddaughter fanned her lazily. She was the first to see the stranger. "Chineke," Mama Uju muttered under her breath, squinting against the glare. "Who walks this cursed road alone in this heat? Does she carry madness, or is she spirit?" By the time the woman reached the first cluster of mud huts, word had already flown ahead like a restless bird. Children abandoned their games of okwe. Goats bleated as they were dragged away from the path. The women selling palm oil paused mid-haggle. Even Nana the blacksmith, whose hammer never stopped ringing, leaned on his anvil to stare. She entered the square like someone stepping into a tale yet unwritten. Her beauty was the kind that silenced a crowd. Not loud, not boastful, but the kind that crept beneath the skin, a quiet, haunting beauty, as though the gods had carved her from dusk and dream. Her eyes were dark pools of secrets, her lips full and unpainted. Her skin glowed faintly despite the punishing sun. Some men stood taller, puffing out their chests. Others cleared their throats as though words might leap from their lips if given the chance. The women, meanwhile, drew closer to one another, whispering behind their palms. "Who is she? Did you see her feet? Not dusty, though she walked the road. I smell trouble in that beauty." But the stranger gave no greetings, offered no explanations. Her steps were measured, graceful, each one soundless on the baked earth. The hut by the Ukpaka forest. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft like dry leaves brushing against one another in the wind. "I need a place to sleep," she said simply. The villagers pointed toward the abandoned hut near the edge of Ukpaka forest. For years the hut had sat in silence, its thatched roof sagging like tired shoulders. Once it belonged to Okafor the hunter, who vanished one rainy season, leaving behind strange chalk marks and cowrie shells arranged in spirals. Since then, no one had dared go near it. Not even the goats grazed there, Mama Uju warned her. But the stranger only smiled faintly. By nightfall, a thin curl of smoke rose from the hut's broken chimney. The stranger had swept the compound clean and hung her woven mat inside. By dawn, she had repaired the fallen roof with palm fronds and patched the cracked walls with red clay. She moved with the quiet precision of someone who had done this many times before, and then she began to sing. It was not a song anyone knew. The words were in no tongue spoken in Umezi, soft and lilting, yet tinged with something ancient. Children hiding behind bushes swore the wind changed direction when she sang, carrying the notes into the heart of the forest. Bananas in Obi Square. 3 days later she arrived at Obi Square with her basket of bananas. "Banana! Banana!" she called, though even her hawking sounded like music. The fruit gleamed beneath the sun, golden as if kissed by a blessing. The first buyers came hesitantly, an old farmer with a taste for sweet fruit, a young mother craving something soft for her teething child. By noon, the entire basket was empty. By the second day, the men began appearing. Ikenna, the palm wine tapper, claimed he needed bananas for his weak stomach. Chidi, the chief's second son, swore his wife had begged for them, though she later denied it. Even Okeki the woodcarver, who lived 2 hills away, made the long walk to Obi Square for fresh bananas. The other market women fumed. Mama, Nkechi, who sold her bananas at half the price, watched her fruit rot beneath the sun. What is special about her bananas, she snapped. Do they fall from heaven? But deep down, everyone knew it wasn't the bananas. The silence around her. Her name, when someone finally asked, was Nwakego. She offered no other details. Where she came from, who her people were, why she had chosen Umezi, all remained locked. Behind her soft, secretive smile, yet certain things became obvious over time. She never visited the stream. Where other women washed their clothes and admired their reflections in the calm water, Nwakego always sent children to fetch hers. She never looked into mirrors. Once, Adeze, the potter's daughter, teased her by holding up a polished brass bowl. Nwakego recoiled so violently her wrapper slipped, her breath ragged. She never spoke of family. Whenever the subject of kinship arose, her gaze went distant as though she were listening to something only she could hear. Whispers grew thicker with each passing moon. Perhaps she is a widow hiding her shame. No, she has the look of one who fled a terrible crime. Or she is no woman at all, but a spirit walking in skin. The elders advised caution. The chief said little, preferring to watch. The women sharpened their gossip into daggers, but still no one dared confront her directly. There was something in her presence that warned, "Do not provoke me." The men change as the moons passed. Something strange began to settle over Umezi. Husbands, who once hurried home after dusk, now lingered in the square, long after their wives had cooked supper. Fathers who used to carry their children on their shoulders spent more and more time running errands near the banana stall. The change was subtle at first. Laughter in compounds grew quieter. Children stopped playing in courtyards at night. Drums that once throbbed with evening songs fell silent. By the third moon, arguments became common. Wives complained of neglect. Husbands grew defensive and angry. Even men known for their patience snapped like dry twigs in Harmattan winds. All the while, Nwakego remained untouched. She sold her bananas. She smiled faintly. She sang her strange songs at dusk, and the women began to fear her. The first warning, one evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Mama Uju went to fetch firewood near Ukpaka Forest. She swore later that she heard Nwakego's voice, soft, rhythmic, but the words were in no language she knew. Curiosity pulled her closer. In the clearing behind the abandoned hut, Nwakego stood barefoot, her head bowed, her arms raised, toward the twisted roots of the giant Iroko tree. Around her feet, someone or something had drawn patterns in white chalk. The air shimmered faintly, as though heat rose from the earth despite the coolness of dusk. Mama Uju fled without a sound, but her heart thumped like a talking drum all the way home. The next morning, she told no one. Not yet. Foreshadowing shadows that night, Umezi dreamt strange dreams. Mothers woke crying. Children whispered of blackbirds tapping at their windows. The Dibia's shrine burned with a sudden, unexplained fire. And far beyond the reach of mortal eyes, in a place where moonlight never touches, something stirred awake. Nwakaego's shadow stretched longer than it should have under the setting sun. It reached toward the forest, toward the river, toward the sleeping hearts of men. And though no one yet understood it, Umezi had opened a door. Every morning, before the sun's first orange fingers touched the horizon, she would walk into Obi Square, her wrapper always immaculate, her headscarf tied just so, her footsteps light and soundless on the clay earth. She never called out like the other traders. She didn't need to. Men came to her as though drawn by an unseen drumbeat. Ikenna, once, content with palm wine and goat stew, now bought 3 bunches daily, though his household had only 2 mouths. Okeke the woodcarver walked miles each morning, abandoning his apprentices to carve alone. Even Chief Okoro's eldest son, Chidi, who was weeks away from his wedding, began appearing at the market long before dawn. The other women fumed. Mamaye and Kichi, who had sold bananas for 30 years, stared at her untouched baskets with burning resentment. "It is not the fruit," she spat one morning, pounding her pestle into the mortar. "It is her. That one carries something in her shadow." Whispers gathered like smoke. "She is too beautiful to be ordinary. She walks as if her feet never truly touch the ground. And have you noticed? She never sweats, even in this heat." Still, no one dared confront her. There was something about her calm, that quiet, haunting smile. It wasn't warmth. It wasn't friendliness. It was spellwork without words. The changing men as moons passed, the men of Umezi changed. They no longer came home early. Some stopped eating their wives' meals entirely, claiming to have filled their stomachs at the square. Others snapped at the smallest things, a misplaced calabash, an unwiped gourd, a child laughing too loudly. And then there were the silences. Long, heavy silences where once there had been laughter. Fathers who had spent evenings telling stories by firelight now sat outside alone, staring at the night sky as though lost. Mothers, once proud and loud, began walking with lowered heads, shame pressing their backs. The village shifted, and the women knew where to point their fingers, but their husbands would not listen. "It is Nwakayego," they whispered in their compounds. "She is breaking us." "Ah," their husbands replied, brows furrowed in anger. "Do not speak her name with such disrespect. That woman is a blessing. Even the gods must have sent her here." And so the distance between man and wife widened like a river in flood season. Mngbeki's silent tears, among all the women whose hearts were breaking, Mngbeki's pain was the sharpest. She was young, soft-spoken, and known across Umezi for her quick hands with the needle and her laugh that could lift shadows. For 5 years she had been married to Obina, a man whose devotion had once been the envy of many. They had grown together like twin Iroko trees, sharing dreams beneath the same moonlight. Obina had once said to her, "If the sun falls, I'll still find you in the dark." But now his eyes were elsewhere. He came home late, his wrapper scented faintly of banana peels and something she couldn't name. When she asked where he'd been, he muttered excuses, his voice distant. Some nights he didn't come home at all. One night she waited by the fire until the embers died. When he stumbled in past midnight, his face flushed and clothes askew, she rose slowly from her mat. "Obina," she said softly. "Is there another woman?" He froze, then turned sharply, his voice colder than she had ever heard. "Do not speak of what you do not understand, Mngbeke. Go and sleep." That night, she cried into her wrapper, muffling her sobs so the neighbors would not hear. But her heart knew what her ears refused to believe. Something had stolen her husband from her, and so she decided to watch. The woman who never sweats for weeks, Mngbeke rose before dawn and shadowed Nwakego from afar. She saw things others missed. How Nwakego always took the long way home, passing beneath the twisted branches of the ancient Iroko tree at the forest's edge. How men visited her hut at night, their steps hesitant when they arrived, but strangely unsteady when they left, as though they walked in dreams. How she never laughed, not once, only smiled that soft, unsettling smile. Then one morning, Mngbeke noticed something stranger still. Nwakayego carried a polished brass bowl in her basket, a gift, perhaps, from one of her admirers. But when the sun struck it, spilling a bright reflection across her face, she hissed softly and turned away, nearly dropping her bananas. That was when Mngbeke knew. "She fears her own reflection," she whispered to herself. Why would a woman fear her own face? The Dibia's warning. That night Mngbeke crept to the hut of Odogwu the Dibia, the oldest seer across 7 villages. The forest was thick with crickets, the air heavy with damp earth. When she entered, the Dibia sat cross-legged before a clay bowl, smoke curling from a pot of burning herbs. Without looking at her, he spoke. "You have come about the woman from nowhere." Mngbeke swallowed hard. "Yes, great one." At last he raised his cloudy eyes to her and said softly, "That is no ordinary woman. What you see is beauty borrowed. The true face beneath it is not meant for mortal eyes. Mbeke shivered. Then, what is she? The Dibia sighed, tracing patterns in the ash with his finger. Long ago there was a maiden named Olama. She was scorned, mocked, and betrayed by her people. One night, broken and heavy with shame, she entered the forbidden forest and called upon something that should never be named. A spirit answered her. It gave her what she wanted most, a face that could not be resisted. But there was a price. What price? Mbeke whispered. Her soul, Odogwu said. It no longer belongs to her. Now she wanders from village to village, feeding on the guilt and weakness of men. She thrives on broken vows, shattered homes, unspoken betrayals. Mbeke's breath caught. Then, my husband. He is already caught in her web, Odogwu said gravely. But there is a way. He reached behind him and brought forth a mirror, small and framed in cowrie, shells. The glass was smooth, yet something ancient seemed to stir within its depths. He wrapped it carefully in white cloth and placed it in her hands. Show her this, he warned, and the mask will fall. But beware, child. If you hesitate, she will destroy you before you can breathe. Mbeke bowed deeply, her heart pounding. A restless night back in Umezi, the air grew heavier with each passing day. Men quarreled openly in the square, shouting insults and threats over imagined slights. Wives stopped singing at dawn. Children stopped laughing. Even the elders sat in silence, their faces lined with worry. At night, strange sounds came from the Ukpaka forest. Whispers carried on the wind. Drums no one played. Birds calling at hours when birds should sleep. And beneath it all, Nwakego thrived. Her bananas never spoiled. Her beauty never dimmed. Her eyes, dark and endless, watched the world with a calm that was almost inhuman. The first death. The breaking point came on a hot afternoon, when Ekena, the palm wine tapper, collapsed in Obi Square. One moment he was laughing loudly, boasting of Nwakego's smile. The next his laughter choked into silence, his hands clawing at his throat. He fell to the earth, his eyes wide with terror, his lips moving soundlessly as if whispering to someone unseen. By nightfall, he was gone. The elders gathered, but none could explain his sudden death. The Dibia warned them softly. The spirit has begun to feed, but no one listened. The men returned to the square the very next morning, crowding around Nwakego as if nothing had happened. The storm on the horizon. That night Mbeke sat beneath the old mango tree outside her hut, the mirror clutched in her trembling hands. Her husband was gone again, his promises broken, his heart wandering where it should not. The moon rose high, pale and cold. From somewhere deep within the forest, a voice was singing, soft, low, almost mournful. It was Nwakaego's voice. Mbeke pressed her back against the tree, tears sliding silently down her face. Spirits or woman, she whispered, I will not let you destroy my home. Above her, a lone owl hooted, an omen of death. And far away, beneath the branches of the ancient Iroko, Nwakego smiled in the dark. Houses without laughter. In the beginning, it was only the women who noticed the change. Meals went untouched. Beds grew cold. Husbands sat outside in silence long after dusk, staring into nothing, their eyes clouded like river water after a flood. Children, once full of laughter, now spoke in hushed tones, sensing a weight they could not name. The market square still thrived each morning, but the conversations were shorter, strained. Fights broke out over smallest things. A gourd of palm oil, a misplaced calabash, a careless word. But among the wives, one name was always spoken behind clenched teeth. Nwakaego. Since she came, peace has left this place, Mama Uju hissed, one evening as they pounded yam. Bananas do not turn a man into a stranger, another muttered bitterly. No, Mama Nkechi said darkly, pounding harder, but a spirit wearing skin might. Still, the men defended her. She is just a traitor, Obina barked at Mungbeke one night, "Leave the poor woman alone." But his voice carried a sharpness Mungbeke had never heard before. He slammed his gourd down so hard it cracked. Her heart ached, but her resolve only grew stronger. The Nights of Whispers. Something strange began happening at night. Those who lived closest to Ukpaka forest spoke of soft singing carried on the wind, low and haunting, as though the trees themselves were humming an ancient sorrow. Dogs barked restlessly, refusing to sleep. Chickens scattered from their coops without reason, feathers caught in sudden breezes that had no source. One night, Adaze, the potter's daughter, woke to fetch water and saw something she would never forget. She swore she saw Nwakaego standing beneath the great Iroko tree, her arms raised, her wrapper loose around her shoulders, her skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. There was something with her, Adaze whispered the next morning, trembling. Tall, black, shapeless, but its eyes burned red. Her mother silenced her with a slap. "Keep such madness off your tongue, child." But Adaze never went near the Iroko tree again. The second death. The first death had been Ikenna, the palm wine tapper. People whispered explanations. Maybe he had eaten bad goat meat. Maybe the spirits of the tree he climbed had punished him. But when Okiki the woodcarver fell next, no one could pretend anymore. It was noon and the market was bustling. Okiki was walking past Nwakego's stall, his hands full of yams. Witnesses swore they saw her smile at him, just a soft, fleeting curve of her lips. And then he froze. His yams dropped to the ground. He clawed at his chest, eyes wide with terror. When he collapsed, his body jerked violently, his limbs twitching like a fish thrown on dry land. By the time the Dibia arrived, his breath had stilled. His face was locked in a silent scream. The elders gathered that night beneath the Iroko tree, faces grim. 2 men gone, Chief Okoro said heavily. And both close to her. 1, Elder whispered. "Be careful with your words," another warned. "Spirits walk where men speak carelessly." But the women knew what the elders feared to admit. This was no coincidence. Mbeke's resolve for Mbeke each day bled into another, her heart carrying the weight of her husband's betrayal and the growing unrest. But she had the mirror, wrapped tightly in white cloth hidden beneath her sleeping mat. Every night she unwrapped it, staring into the smooth, silent surface, her reflection staring back with weary eyes. Odogwu, the Dibia's words echoed endlessly in her mind. Show her. This and her mask will fall. But she could not act alone. So one evening she called a secret meeting beneath the mango grove near the stream. The women came quietly, veils drawn low, their wrappers tied tight. "We cannot let her destroy our homes," Mbeke said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Our children watch us suffer. Our husbands drift away like smoke. If we do nothing, Umezi will die." Mama Nkechi spat into the dust. "Then let us drive her out tonight. We will burn her hut, if we must." But Mama Uju shook her head. "You think fire will touch her?" "No, that one is bound to something older than our hands." Mbeke unwrapped the mirror and held it up, its cowrie-framed glass shimmering faintly beneath the moonlight. Gasps rippled through the group. "This," she said softly, "is the only way." One by one the women agreed. They would act at dawn, when the square was full and Nwakego's mask would have no shadows to hide behind. The enchanted smile. But Nwakego was no fool. That night, as she walked through the square carrying her empty basket, she paused at the edge of the mango grove where the women had gathered earlier. Though no sound carried, her lips curved faintly, almost knowingly. In the darkness, her shadow stretched unnaturally long across the ground, reaching past the huts, past the trees, toward the silent forest. And if anyone had stood close enough, they would have heard her whisper, "You think you can face me with glass? Foolish women, and your reflections will betray you before mine ever will." The men's madness by the next moon. Umezi was drowning. Men began to fight openly in Obi Square. Brothers against brothers, friends against friends. Fists turned to knives, and knives to spears. All over one thing. Who did Nwakaego truly care for? Chief Okoro's sons nearly killed each other over a basket of bananas she had smiled at one of them while selling. 2 hunters refused to share a kill, each convinced she would favor him for his meat. Even boys as young as 16 stood chest to chest, eyes glazed with something wild ready to spill blood. And all the while, she sold her bananas, calm and untouched, her haunting smile cutting deeper than any blade. The third death, it happened. During market day, Chidi, the chief's eldest son, approached her stall with a goat leg wrapped in palm leaves. A gift. Witnesses say she touched his hand lightly when she accepted it. Moments later, Chidi collapsed where he stood. This time, the dibia arrived before his last breath left him. He chanted, poured libations, pressed cowries to his forehead, but Chidi's eyes rolled back and his lips parted in a final gasp. 3 dead. 3 men, all known to have visited her hut under the cover of night. The awakening of fear. The women wept, but their tears soon hardened into rage. The children clung to their mothers. The elders no longer spoke in parables. Fear walked openly now, crouching in the corners of every compound. One thing became clear to everyone. Nwakaego was not just a woman. Mogbeke's final decision. That night, Mogbeke stood before her small clay shrine, the mirror clutched tightly in her hands. Her wrapper was damp with sweat despite the cool air. Obina had not come home again. She whispered to the spirits of her ancestors, her voice breaking, "Give me strength. I will face her. Even if I do not live to tell the tale, let this end with me." The wind stirred the leaves outside, carrying a strange, low hum. It sounded almost like laughter. A gathering at dawn before sunrise. The women dressed in mourning, wrappers and painted white chalk across their foreheads. Mogbeke led them through the still-sleeping village to the marketplace. In the center, they placed the mirror on a carved stool, covering it in white cloth. Around it, they poured palm oil, bitter cola, and ashes. A circle of truth. The trap was set. But Nwakaego knew in the distance, beneath the ancient Iroko tree. Nwakaego stood barefoot, her bananas untouched at her feet. The air around her shimmered, faintly, and her eyes glowed softly in the half-light of dawn. "So," she murmured, "they are ready to test me." Her reflection in a puddle at her feet rippled strangely, shifting as though something beneath the surface stirred. Then the puddle stilled, her smile returned, and she began to walk. The dawn came slowly, bleeding gold into the horizon, but Umezi woke in silence. No children ran along the dusty paths, no roosters crowed, no goats bleated. The air itself felt heavy, thick, almost weighting. In the heart of Obi Square, a group of women gathered in a circle, their mourning wrappers tied tight, white chalk smeared across their foreheads. At the center sat the mirror, resting on a carved, wooden stool wrapped in a spotless white cloth. Palm oil and bitter cola had been poured around it in a ring, marking a sacred boundary. No man had been allowed near the preparation. This was women's work, guided by grief, anger, and an ancient, unspoken understanding. Mogbeke stood at the center of the circle, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the cloth over the mirror. Her voice was low but steady. Today, the spirit meets its reflection. Today Umezi sees the truth. The women murmured their agreement, their faces hard and resolute. The calm. Before the storm, from the forest's edge came the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps. She appeared as she always did, Nwakaego, the banana seller, the woman from nowhere. Her wrapper today was deep crimson, the color of fire and blood. On her head balanced a basket of golden bananas that seemed to gleam unnaturally bright in the early sun. She moved like water poured from a calabash, smooth, unbroken, unhurried. But this morning, something different hung about her. Her beauty was sharper, almost painful to look at, as if she had drawn strength from every broken vow, every whispered betrayal, every tear shed in Umezi since her arrival. The men began to gather at the edges of the square, confused and restless, their breath coming quick, their eyes glazed. They didn't know why they had come, only that something pulled them here. Chief Okoro's 2 sons stood shoulder to shoulder, fists clenched, their gazes fixed on Nwakaego. Obinna, Mugbeke's husband, was among them too, his face pale, his expression strangely blank. The women tightened their circle. The first words, Mugbeke stepped forward, her headscarf low, her heart pounding like a talking drum. "Nwakego," she said softly, yet the name carried like a ripple across the square. "Come, the gods have given us a gift today. Look into the mirror and see the beauty they have blessed you with." The banana seller stopped. Her calm faltered for the first time. "No," she whispered, her voice as soft as falling ash. "I will not." The women began chanting, their voices weaving into a low hum. "Truth has no shadow, truth has no shadow, truth has no shadow." The air thickened. Somewhere far away, thunder rolled through the skies above Umezi were clear, the unmasking with a sudden sharp motion. Mugbeke pulled away the white cloth. The mirror stood naked in the center of the circle, its smooth, polished surface catching the sunlight. For a moment, silence swallowed the square. Even the birds stilled. Nwakaego's breath came quick. Her hands trembled slightly, the basket wobbling on her head. Her haunting calm was gone now, replaced by a flicker of something older than fear. Rage. "Do not do this," she warned, her voice suddenly deeper, layered, as though 2 voices spoke through her. "You do not know what you awaken." But the women's chanting grew louder. "Truth has no shadow, truth has no shadow." Suddenly the mirror caught her gaze, and everything stopped. The scream that wasn't human. It began as a low, guttural sound, like wind forced through hollow bamboo, then rose into a piercing shriek that tore through the square and into the sky. Babies wailed, goats bolted, men clutched their ears, falling to their knees. Nwakego's body twisted unnaturally, her limbs jerking, her wrapper slipping from her shoulders. Her shadow on the ground lengthened, growing and warping, stretching toward the mirror as though dragged by invisible chains. And then the villagers saw it. Her reflection in the mirror was not human. Where once there was soft skin and gentle curves, there was now a creature of shadows and flame. Its face stretched and cracked, its eyes like burning coals sunk deep into endless darkness. Its mouth opened wide, revealing teeth like shards of obsidian. Around it swirled black smoke and something that looked like wings made of tattered mist. The crowd gasped. Some cried out. Others fell to the ground wailing. And Obinna, Obinna stared at the mirror, his face frozen in terror, tears streaming down his cheeks. The spirit's wrath. The entity within Nwakego fought back. The earth trembled beneath the villagers' feet. The ring of palm oil around the mirror caught fire without warning, flames leaping high, fed by no wind. A dark cloud gathered above the square, swallowing the sun. "You dare!" the spirit thundered through Nwakaego's mouth. "You dare! Call me into the light." One of the women faltered, nearly breaking the circle, but Mama Uju's voice rose above the roar. "Hold fast. She feeds on fear. Do not give it to her." The chanting resumed, louder than ever, drowning out the storm. Mugbeke stepped forward, holding the mirror aloft with both trembling hands, forcing Nwakego to see herself. The battle of wills. Nwakego fell to her knees, her body shaking violently, her beautiful face cracked like old clay, patches of darkness seeping through. Her voice came in broken whispers. "I chose this. I asked for beauty. I asked for love." But the spirit within her roared, "You asked for vengeance." And I answered, "I am not leaving." Mugbeke's voice broke as she cried out, "Then go back to where you came from. Umez will not fall for your curse." She smashed a calabash of consecrated palm wine at Nwakego's feet. Steam rose instantly, hissing like a struck serpent. The spirit howled, writhing, as though burning from within. The final blow, from within. The circle. Mama Uju stepped forward carrying a small clay pot. Inside it was an egg, pure white, spotless, given by the dibia. When the mask falls, he had said, break the egg and her bond will shatter. Mungbeke nodded through, her tears, her knuckles white around the mirror's frame. As Nwakaego's reflection screamed soundlessly, Mungbeke smashed the egg against the earth. The world exploded into light. A great wind tore through the square, ripping wrappers, overturning baskets, scattering yams and palm oil gourds. The mirror blazed like a second sun, its surface rippling and pulling. Nwakego's body arched backward, her scream echoing like thunder until her form dissolved into smoke and shadow, sucked into the mirror's glass. Then, silence. The flames died. The air cleared. The sun returned. The mirror, now cracked through, its center lay on the earth. Its power was gone. Aftermath where Nwakaego had stood, there was nothing but a scattering of banana peels and the faint smell of burnt palm oil. The villagers stared in stunned silence. Men wept openly, falling at their wives' feet begging forgiveness. Children clung to their mothers. Chief Okoro's sons embraced, sobbing. Obina crawled to Mungbeke, his hands trembling as he pressed his forehead to her feet. Forgive me, he whispered hoarsely. I was blind. I was lost. She touched his head gently but said nothing. Epilogue. The lesson of the mirror. The cracked mirror was buried beneath the great Iroko tree at the edge of Ukpaka forest, wrapped in white, cloth and bound with cowrie shells. No one dared speak Nwakego's name again, but her story lived on. Elders told it by firelight. When a man breaks his vow, he opens a door, and not everything that walks through wears human skin. The women taught their daughters, beauty can deceive, but the mirror never lies. And the men of Umezi changed. They came home early. They cherished their families. They learned that temptation carries shadows, and some shadows are hungrier than others. As for Mungbeke, she became a quiet guardian of her people's wisdom. Children gathered around her to hear the story of the banana seller who feared mirrors, and every time she told it, she ended the same way. A reflection may hide, but the truth always finds its way to the light. And so the tale lived on, whispered, from generation to generation, the end.